My good people, my good people. Hello, world. I'd like to welcome y'all back to the show that's hot with your boy Rob Scott. This is Rob's 2 cents, baby. What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody is good, man. I missed you guys so much, man. So much has been going on. We got some teams rising in the NBA, some unexpected teams rising in the NBA. We have a superstar being born right in front of our very eyes. And ladies and gentlemen, my good people, the NFL playoffs are here. And I'd like to welcome y'all to today's show where we're going to discuss what's going on right now in the NBA. And I'm going to give you my predictions for this upcoming NFL wild card first round of the playoffs, baby. And one thing I love about sports is you hear the old cliche. You hear that old verbiage of that old saying, expect the unexpected. But no one saw this coming. So I want you guys to kick your feet back, relax. If you're on your morning commute, like I used to say, keep both hands on the steering wheel and all eyes on the road. Can't say both because some of you guys might have glasses like myself. And get ready to tune in to the hottest sports conversation in the nation. This is Rob's 2 cents, baby. And I got to start off by talking about the Memphis Grizzlies. Who saw Memphis coming? I can't. We saw what Memphis did last year. They were able to sneak their way into the playoffs by winning the play-in tournament, beating the Golden State Warriors, in which we saw Ja Morant make some unbelievable shots at the end of that game. Kind of became a closer. Now, even though they didn't fare well into the playoffs, they made it to the dance. And now Memphis looks to build off that momentum because right now, ladies and gentlemen, the Memphis Grizzlies are in third place in the Western Conference. With a record right now, 29-14, they're third in points per game, scoring 112.2 points a game. First in rebounds per game. I mean, this team rebounds by committee. We know what Steven Adams can do. Steven Adams is the Aussie, brolic down low, but they rebound by committee. 9th in assists per game and 15th in opponent's points per game. Say that 5 times fast. Right now, Memphis is balling, and they are being led by not just a candidate for most improved player of the year, but honestly by a candidate who many people can say is a potential MVP candidate, dare I say. I mean, we look at Memphis this year. They're not just beating average teams. They're not just beating under 500 teams. They are beating the top echelon teams. I mean, just the other night, they had a victory against Golden State. Now, mind you, Klay Thompson just got back. There was no Draymond Green. There was no James Wiseman. However, that is still a great win for a very young Memphis team that's looking to make a statement this year and looking to make a little noise in the playoffs. Beat them 116-108. I mean, handed victory. Ja Morant going absolutely crazy. Giving you 29 points in that game. Had a hell of a game. 11-23 from the field. Mind you, he was 1 of 4 from the three-point line, but doing all the right plays. Only had 2 turnovers. Gave you 2 blocks. Gave you 8 assists and 5 rebounds. Ja Morant getting the job done. Speaking of his new closing status, we saw on Monday, back in last year, December 27th, on a Monday, against the second place Phoenix Suns in the Western Conference. Game came down to the wire. Memphis eventually wins that game 114-113. We saw Ja Morant hitting game-winning floaters, being able to take his defenders off the dribble, get to the lane at will. I mean, we haven't seen this type of athleticism since Derrick Rose, as far as at the point guard position and what he's able to do off the dribble, using his speed, using that floater, which I heard somebody joke on one of these various sports channels, said Ja Morant's floater is on 99. This is 2K, that floater is on 99. So we're talking about you beat not only the top seed in Golden State, you beat the second seed in the standings in Phoenix. You beat up on the Los Angeles Lakers twice. Not to mention one of those games against the Lakers, Ja went crazy, went for 41, 13 to 27 from the field, 6 or 7 from the three-point line. I mean, give you 10 rebounds. This is your point guard. 10 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals. Ja Morant is becoming a superstar right before our very eyes. And it's safe to say, Ja Morant, that boy cold. And we look at the Memphis Grizzlies. As I mentioned, they have Steven Adams. They have my man Kyle Anderson, a former San Antonio Spurs player, who we all know you can't speed Kyle Anderson up. Kyle Anderson is the true embodiment of playing at your own pace. They got Zaire Williams, who's making some noise. Remember, I think Zaire is a former teammate of Bronny James, LeBron's son. Doing it big in the NBA. The evolution of Tyus Jones, the evolution of Desmond Bain, the evolution of Jaren Jackson Jr., JJJ, Triple J as they like to call him in Memphis. They are waiting on Dylan Brooks to come back, who we know sprained his ankle pretty severely. He's going to be out for a couple of weeks. Steven Adams has been going through the COVID protocol. They're going to get these players back. You know, All-Star game coming up, giving teams extra time to rest their play. They're going to get these players back for a playoff push. And you will be a damn fool to not take the Memphis Grizzlies seriously. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win it all, but we're talking about a team who I just mentioned barely made it in through the play-in tournament, defeating the Golden State Warriors last year, to now sitting in third place in a very tough Western Conference, being led by their superstar, Ja Morant, who's now, I have deemed, the closer. Memphis has made a statement this year, and if you were looking for some attention, Memphis Grizzlies, you definitely got mine. And also last night, we saw a battle of the powerhouses in the Eastern Conference. We're going to travel out east as we saw the number 1 seed Chicago Bulls take on the number 2 seed in the Brooklyn Nets. Let's talk about this for a while. Let's talk about the game that was played last night, because it was a great game. If we look at the box score, the Brooklyn was able to defeat the Chicago Bulls. It was 138 to 112. The Bulls, depleted right now. Missing Alex Caruso. Derrick Jones injures himself in the first quarter. Luckily today I read somewhere that it's not a tear or anything. He just hyperextended his leg. So he should be back in 4 to 6 weeks, hopefully. I mean, we see some great basketball being played last night. The reuniting of the big three in Brooklyn, seeing Kyrie Irving play, being able to return for these home games, which is the deal now. As we know, everybody in all of these sports leagues has been hit hard with this COVID-19 bug. And with Kyrie being an unvaccinated player, with the mandate in New York, we know at the beginning of the season, Brooklyn Nets simply told Kyrie, hey, we can't force you to get a vaccine. But if you're not going to get the vaccine, we don't want you just for away games. We want you here on the team. And if that's something you cannot provide for us right now, then you just sit at home until we're able to figure out what we can do. seeing how COVID has ravished the NBA, has ravished the NFL and other various sports leagues, they finally came to their senses and said, you know what, Kyrie, you can play the home games. You can play the away games. We will allow you to alternate off and on. So now Kyrie is back. He's been back with the Brooklyn Nets now for 3 games, as we know, playing in those away games. Right now, the Brooklyn Nets are 2-1 this season with Kyrie in the lineup. 13-3 overall since they've been united. That's crazy, right? To think that since the Brooklyn Nets have come together, they've only played on the court together 16 times. They're 13-3 when all 3 players play, and those 3 players being Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden. And let's look at the box score last night, as I mentioned. And it was a pretty nip and tuck game early on. As you know, the Brooklyn won the first quarter, Chicago won the second quarter. The third quarter is where the scale began to tip in Brooklyn's favor, as they had a 39 point third quarter and held the Chicago Bulls to only 19 points in the third. Kevin Durant just absolutely marvelous in the third quarter. Excuse me. Shooting at a high percentage, giving you 17 points in the third quarter, and they just pulled away. James Harden, career night, giving you a season high 16 assists. Kyrie didn't shoot that well from the field, only giving you 9 points. But the Brooklyn Nets definitely made a statement last night. When those 3 guys are on the court at the same time, they are a force to be reckoned with. That is not a team that you want to play in a 7-game series. Now, granted, I'm going to correct a lot of people where I hear them wrong at, all of these so-called experts. People keep comparing this Brooklyn Nets team to the Brooklyn Nets team of last year. That is not the case. This is nowhere near the same team of like they had last year. You don't have Joe Harris right now, who's recovering from surgery. You shipped Landry Shamet over to the Phoenix Suns. You definitely got a lot older, bringing in a Paul Millsap, re-signing Blake Griffin, bringing back LaMarcus Aldridge, who we thought his NBA career was over due to his heart complications. Glad to see that brother back in the league and that he's healthy, which is the most important part. This is not the same team from last year. So a lot of people keep comparing, saying, hey, we saw how much trouble KD was by himself, pretty much falling short to Giannis, in which we know that the Milwaukee Bucks would eventually win the NBA championship last year. Their series, that second round series, going all the way to Game 7, KD, of course, hitting the shots of shots, in which we thought it was over, thought it was a game-winning three-point line, but he had an inch of his toe on the line, and it was a 2-point that going to overtime, and Milwaukee dominates in overtime. But the team that KD played with last year is not the team that he has to play with this year. There's been a lot of questions circling Brooklyn. James Harden is just now finally starting to get in his groove over the last 8 or 9 games. At the beginning of the season, we didn't know what that guy was. We weren't looking at James Harden. We was looking at Harden James, because it was just an abysmal play in the beginning of the season. But now James Harden starting to find his groove. Kevin Durant has been Kevin Durant all season, as we know. He now leads the league in scoring. So, now to bring in a Kyrie Irving, who's pretty much been fresh, sitting at home, staying ready, practicing. He comes back in. I mean, what can we say about Kyrie Irving? The guy came back in on his first game back against Indiana. He gives you 22 points. We're talking about a guy who was sitting at home, not really having real basketball activity. Because I don't care how many shots you shoot in the open gym. I don't care how many scrimmages you run. I know I haven't played in the NBA, but I can tell you, based off what I've seen, playing in the NBA is a whole different animal for playing scrimmages against, and not playing at real game speed. So for him to be able to get off his couch, to come in, drop 22 on a legit Indiana team. I know they have their struggles right now, but just based off that night, Remember, this was the night Lance Stevenson had made his return to Indiana from the G League. So, emotions were high. Lance Stevenson comes out, gives you a 20-point first quarter off the bench. And for Brooklyn to be able to fight through that momentum, to see Kyrie be able to hit some shots down the stretch, he finally catches his groove. He goes 9 of 17 from the field. I mean, it only gives you 2 turnovers. Again, this is his first game back since the NBA season has started. And for Kyrie to be able to do that, it just shows you the type of special player he is and why Brooklyn is, reluctant to go back on their word and allow him to play away games. So, and in no way, shape or form did this affect the Bulls. The Bulls were without players. I don't think this was a statement game against the Bulls per se. I think this was a statement game for Brooklyn to know that, man, when we have our 3 guys on the court, we can be a force to be reckoned with. Now, the Bulls, on the other hand, still the number 1 seed. They did win the regular season series against the Brooklyn Nets because they had defeated them in the first 2 games prior to. Granted, Brooklyn didn't have Kyrie. So, I can't wait to see how these 2 teams are going to go against each other when both sides are completely healthy. I mean, I don't see the Bulls being able to beat Brooklyn in a 7-game series, but hey, stranger things have happened. I didn't see Milwaukee beating Brooklyn last year either. So, you have to worry about the injury bug. You also now have to worry about the COVID bug. But, the Brooklyn Nets played a great game last night. As I mentioned, sent the message to the league. I wouldn't even say just to the Bulls. To the league that you guys should be a little nervous with all 3 of us on the court. Now, this is where the interesting part comes in with the Brooklyn Nets. We know that they are a serious contender when all 3 guys are on the court. Will Kyrie get the vaccination is the question. Will he get vaccinated so he can play home games? It's come out now that everybody should know by now that the state of New York, the city of New York, is saying, hey, you can allow Kyrie to play, home games at the Barclays being unvaccinated, even though that's against the mandate. Because it's against the mandate, we're gonna fine you every game that you guys allow him to play. So you just got to pay to play. So I believe it goes $1,000, $2,000, $4,000. Eventually, it's going to become $5,000 a game for Kyrie to play, which the Brooklyn Nets can afford it. But also, I'm on a new panelist. I'm a new analyst on a panel of a new sports network that I'm working with. I'm gonna talk about that more at the end of the show. And they brought up a good point of they read somewhere that if Kyrie does proceed to play in home games, if he does cause an outbreak with the Brooklyn Nets, then the Barclays Center have the right to say, well, none of you can play home games. And then that's going to put a lot of pressure on the Brooklyn Nets to try to keep Kyrie Irving healthy. On the other hand, let's say the Nets decide not to go the fine route and just allow Kyrie Irving to play in away games. That works for the regular season, but how would that translate in the playoffs? You got to remember, if you're a high seed, you're going to have home court advantage. Well, with the fact that Kyrie Irving can only play away games, home court advantage ain't what you're looking for. So, do the Nets tank to become a lower seed so now that they can play more away games than home games? Or do the Nets, learn to play 2 different ways? Because eventually, or essentially, that's what you're saying. Essentially, you're saying that the Nets are going to have to learn to play with Kyrie, and then the Nets are going to have to learn to play without Kyrie. And let me tell you guys something. With a guy like Kyrie Irving, with the talent that he possesses, you're going to have to play a completely different style of game without him on the court. We're talking about a guy that can get his own shot. We're talking about a guy who can be a premier closer for you down the stretch. We're talking about a guy who has N1-like handles, has the best handle in the NBA, who can finish with either hand at the rim and has a 99 layup package. You don't replace a guy like that. I don't care how many guys you put on the court. It's hard to replace a guy like Kyrie. So how will that translate in the playoffs? How will you play one way when you're playing at home and then play another way when you have Kyrie for away games? Just some interesting tidbits to look at because let's say the Nets pay the fine and you don't win the championship. That's a lot of pressure to put on a team because if I start to pay $5,000 a game for you to be able to play because you don't want to take a vaccine and we don't win, I'm going to want some of my money back. Mind you, I've been paying you to sit on your butt this whole time before you came back to play away games. So that's something to think about when it comes to the Brooklyn Nets and their big three. We're going to keep our eyes on this situation. You know I'm going to keep you guys informed on what's going on. But enough for the NBA. We got to talk about the NFL, baby. Because the playoffs are near. They're going to be happening this weekend. We're going to have 2 games on Saturday. We're going to have 2 games on Sunday. And then we're going to have, for the first time ever, a Monday night football playoff game. And what I want to do is give you guys my predictions on how I think this first round of the wild card series is going to go. We're going to go based on the time that they're going to be coming on TV. So the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be the first game up. As we know, the Las Vegas Raiders finished in 5th place. Cincinnati finished in 4th place. They were able to win their division. I don't think that they played each other this season. Actually, they did. They played each other this season. Joe Burrow didn't have a great game. However, they were able to get their rushing game going with Joe Mixon as he was able to get 123 yards off 30 carries. They won 32-13. It's going to be interesting to see how the Las Vegas Raiders are going to be able to, withstand that offensive onslaught with Joe Burrow. I mean, he showed that he can play the position of quarterback. Joe Burrow is nothing to squint your nose up at. I mean, we look at Joe Burrow on the year. He threw for 4,600 yards. He was 34-14, 34 touchdowns, and only throwing 14 interceptions. He does have a great receiving core. You got Jamar Chase. You got T. Higgins. I mean, he got some guys that can get some things done. You can even play Joe Mixon in that as a even though he's the running back of the team, he can catch the ball and give you some positive yardage. However, Derek Carr did play a great game. They have some momentum right now, as we know that the Raiders were able to beat the Los Angeles Chargers to even qualify for this playoff run. And right now they were on a 4-game winning streak. And they also have a nice rushing game. Josh Jacobs averaging about 21 carries per game since week 15. So, and not to mention the 132 yards he had last week in that closeout game to end the season. So, I'm going to take in this game, I'm going to take the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to say the Cincinnati Bengals are going to win this game. I got faith in Joe Burrow. I don't think they're going to get past the second, the divisional round of the playoffs, the second round of the playoffs. But I do think that he's done enough to kind of quiet the Las Vegas Raiders. Unfortunately, the Las Vegas Raiders are starting to get, the same treatment that the Dallas Cowboys get. Eventually the Las Vegas Raiders are going to do Raider-like things. And, I don't think there's enough firepower for the Las Vegas Raiders to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. So I'm going to take the Bengals winning 28-17. The Bengals is my pick. Next, after that game, also on Saturday, we're going to have New England versus the Buffalo Bills. Now, this is going to be an interesting game. These teams have played each other twice this past regular season. with each team winning against each other in each other's home stadium. It's going to be a great game. You're going to have pretty much Josh Allen versus Bill Belichick. I don't put any stock in Mac Jones. I like Mac Jones. Mac Jones is a great, how can you say it without sounding like a jerk? Mac Jones is a great game manager. I don't think he's going to throw away the game. However, Mac Jones is not the guy that I'm going to bet on to win me this game. You're going to need that defense to step up. And unfortunately, I don't think even as great as of the defensive mind as Bill Belichick has, and I know that defense is going to be geared up and ready to play, I don't know how you're going to overcome, stopping Josh Allen all game. Josh Allen is a monster, and Josh Allen has some weapons of his own. And, I think he's going to get Emmanuel Sanders back. You got Cole Beasley. You got Stephon Diggs. You got Dawson Knox, who's their stud tight end. And Josh Allen is a quarterback that can use his legs. He will run out of the pocket. He will extend plays. He will make life very difficult on this New England Patriot team. And as I just mentioned about Mac Jones gave you 22 and 13, 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Hasn't really wowed me on the offensive side. The game that New England did win against Buffalo, we remember it was such a windy day. It was no way for Josh Allen to use the full capacity of his arm. And we know Josh Allen has a hell of an arm on him. So I got the Buffalo Bills. I just think it's too much firepower with the Buffalo Bills to lose to the New England Patriots. I think it's very admirable that the New England Patriots were able to make it back into the playoffs. So shout out to Coach Bill Belichick, showing that he is a hell of a coach and that you cannot overlook his contribution and his coaching mind on what he brings to the New England Patriots. With that being said, I got the Buffalo Bills winning. Actually, they're going to win, I'm going to say 27-9. I got the Buffalo Bills. Then on Sunday, the first game of the day is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, the Bucs are going to be getting help. They're going to be getting back a couple of players. They're going to be getting back Levante David. They're going to be getting back Leonard Ford. Shaq Barrett should be, a little healthy going into this playoff run. Levante David, again, that defensive side, they should be healthy. Now, granted, you don't have Chris Godwin. You lost him for the rest of the season. You lost Antonio Brown because he had a meltdown on the sideline. So now, you're down to Mike Evans and Rob Gronkowski. If anybody can pull this out, it's going to be the GOAT, Tom Brady. It's going to be my boy, GOAT Brady. Tom Brady is just a guy you don't want to bet against. Now, even though, granted, I feel like with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their defense has problems with guys who historically, with quarterbacks who can move their legs and extend plays and get out of the pocket. And Jalen Hurts is going to do that to you. But, man, if we look at the numbers, Jalen Hurts doesn't scare me. The Eagles have a nice team. Don't get me wrong. We look at the Eagles squad. That's not a team that you want to overlook. However, Jalen Hurts, 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Do I really want to put my stock in that? Because then we look on the flip side of that coin. Brady threw for 5,300 yards for 43 touchdowns and only 12 interceptions, who, even though a lot of people are saying Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady is my pick to win the MVP. Look at those numbers. And we got to remember that Tom Brady is at the age of 44 years old. And you got your team to be second in the NFC conference, and win the divisional title for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who hasn't won a divisional title in quite some time. So, I'm laughing at I was watching clips from I Am Athlete podcast with Chad Ochocinco and Brandon Marshall, and they had my boy LaShawn McCoy on there, Shady McCoy. And, just listening to the admiration that he has for Tom Brady, he laughed and just said, Tom Brady is something different. Like when you have that man on your team, you have all the confidence in the world. He said from the players in the locker room all the way down to the janitor sweeping the floor. He's just able to elevate everybody's morale and everybody's level of competition. With him being on your side, being your teammate, and that's exactly what I think is going to happen when the Philadelphia Eagles play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I just think that Tom Brady, even though granted, the Eagles are going to put up a fight, I just think this is probably one of the easier games to predict, which makes me a little nervous because the teams that we thought that the Bucks will run through, they did not. They lost to the New Orleans Saints. We looked last year. Taylor Heineke took them down to the wire, with him playing for the Washington football team. So the teams who we thought that they would run over, they didn't. I mean, even before Antonio Brown had that meltdown, the Jets were winning that game. You were losing to the New York Jets. So, I don't want to just completely overlook the Eagles, but I think Tom Brady gets his groove. I think Rob Gronkowski has a great game. They get into that red zone, beware of the big man known as Mike Evans. I got the Buccaneers winning against the Philadelphia Eagles 24-17. You just don't bet against the GOAT. Then on Sunday evening, we're going to have the San Francisco 49ers versus the Dallas Cowboys. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be pretty interesting, considering the fact that Dallas could not beat the teams that were eligible for the playoffs this year. I'm losing to all of the top teams and beating up on the subpar teams in the NFL. Now, granted, Dak was starting to get his groove towards the end of the year. They played the Philadelphia Eagles for their last game of the season. Their coach didn't play any of their starting players, so the Dallas Cowboys pretty much beat up on reserves. However, that game can serve well for Dak Prescott. It's like shooting a basketball. When you see that shot go in, that rim start to get bigger and bigger. And when, as a quarterback, when you see you're making accurate throws and your receivers are catching these passes and you're starting to get into a rhythm as an offense, that can be exactly what the doctor ordered. However, they're going to have a tough time going against the San Francisco 49ers. We know what their defense has done this year. Their defense is nothing to play with. I repeat, their defense is nothing to play with. San Francisco, throughout the year, third in total yards allowed, sixth in passing yards, seventh in rushing yards allowed, 10th in points scored. So we're talking about a team that's going to stifle you at the line, who can rush forward and don't really have to commit their secondary to put their hands on you to get to your quarterback. And Dak Prescott, that's something he wants to stay away from. He threw for 4,400 yards this year, 37-10. But, as I mentioned, taking losses against teams that you were just absolutely was supposed to run over. I'm going to tell you this right now, ladies and gentlemen. The San Francisco 49ers are the real deal. They got Deebo Samuel, who's pretty much a utility knife for that team. Jimmy Garoppolo, granted, he might not be the best quarterback in the world, but you still have to take into effect that he sat behind Tom Brady. He watched one of the greatest players to ever play this game play it the right way. And Jimmy has taken his team to a Super Bowl. Even though they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs a few years ago, he can get the job done. And I just think him and Debo is going to be a little too much, for them to handle. I'm going to tell you right now, I would love to say the Dallas Cowboys, but like I always say, the Cowboys are eventually going to do Cowboy things. I take that all the way back to 06, 07 when Tony Romo went out there. All he had to do was catch the ball and put the ball in position for the field goal kicker to make the kick. He fumbled the ball. They lost in the playoffs. I just don't see the Cowboys winning this. I'm going to take the San Francisco 49ers to win in a close game. I'm going to say 24-21. San Francisco is going to get the job done. Pittsburgh versus Kansas City will be on Sunday night. And excuse me, there's going to be 3 games played on Sunday. I apologize for that, y'all. Let me make that correction. Pittsburgh versus Kansas City. Big Ben has had a great career, 2-time Super Bowl champion. Regardless of what's going on off the field, you can't deny that on the field, Ben Roethlisberger was a force to be reckoned with. He's seen this team. He's seen the Steelers up. He's seen the Steelers down, and it was just amazing that they were able to sneak into the playoffs. However, they are going against Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes looks like he's starting to get his groove back. Not a guy you want to bet your money against. Hopefully Tyreek Hill can pick it up, but we know what Travis Kelce can do. You got Nico Harbin. I mean, that team is just going to bring a lot of noise to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't trust their defense, even though they got Defensive Player of the Year, in my opinion, and T.J. Watt, who just had an amazing season, giving you 22 sacks on the year. That's not something to overlook. You got players that can't even give you 4 sacks. This man gave you 22 sacks. So I don't want to just overlook the Pittsburgh defense like they're nothing, because that defense is the reason that they're in the playoffs. However, offensively speaking, they cannot score the ball. And if you can't score against the Kansas City Chiefs, that is a recipe for disaster. I got the Chiefs in a blowout, winning, I'm going to say 35-6. That's my prediction. And, of course, the last game, which is going to be on Monday night, like I mentioned, this is going to be the first time that Monday Night Football has ever hosted a playoff game. It's going to be the Arizona Cardinals versus Los Angeles Rams. I'm going to just tell you right now, I got the Los Angeles Rams. I don't trust the Arizona Cardinals. They were the best team in the league at one point. Kyler got hurt. DeAndre Hopkins got hurt. Granted, Kyler came back, but he hasn't really played that well since he's been back. DeAndre Hopkins is not coming back. They still have Zach Ertz, they got some pretty, decent, James Conner over there. But I don't trust the Arizona Cardinals to get the job done. I really don't. They got Christian Kirk, A.J. Green, Zach Ertz. I mean, they still have some pretty decent players over there. As I mentioned, James Conner, the former Pittsburgh Steeler. But I'm expecting the Los Angeles Rams defense to step up. The Los Angeles Rams have to come out playing desperate. You, first of all, went all in to get Matthew Stafford. That's one. You gave up all of these first-round draft picks to get Matthew Stafford, to send Jared Goff over there to Detroit. You bring in Matthew Stafford. You lose Robert Woods during the regular season to a torn ACL. You now bring in Odell Beckham Jr. on the defensive side of the ball. You already had Aaron Donald. You already had Jalen Ramsey, who you gave up a lot for just to get Jalen. Now you have Leonard Floyd on the team. And then you bring in a Von Miller, former Super Bowl MVP. Remember the Denver Broncos won in 2016, I want to say? And Von Miller was the MVP on the defensive side of the ball. You bring in that guy. Now, granted, Von Miller ain't that guy who he was in 2016, but you pair him with an Aaron Donald, you pair him with a Leonard Floyd, you pair him with a Jalen Ramsey, that's still a defense that should be reckoned with. So I think that the Los Angeles Rams should plow through the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm going to say they're going to win that game. I'm going to say 24, 12. I don't think Arizona's going to be able to get much against that defense. I think that defense should be offended. They haven't played well this season. They should come out to look to hurt somebody. You still have Aaron Donald's going to go down as one of the best defensive players to ever play the game of football. Take advantage of it. They should go out there and put a hurting on the Arizona Cardinals. And then as we wind down, ladies and gentlemen, have to give a shout out to my boy Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson made his return back for Golden State on January 9th against the Cleveland Cavaliers, which resulted in a win for the Warriors. He came out and gave you 17 points. Mind you, Klay Thompson has not played for 2 years. However, the shooting, that boy can still shoot. And he came out showing that. He definitely got his shots up. He was 7-18 against Cleveland, but as I mentioned, still gave you 17 points. They would then lose their next game against the Memphis Grizzlies. You know my boy Ja Morant has something to say about that. Did I mention that the Memphis Grizzlies are on a 10-game winning streak? As I mentioned, that is not a team that you want to see in the playoff. Memphis playing very well, but it was just great to see Klay back out there. The crowd gave him excellent ovation. The way that they called him in the starting lineup, you could tell it was very emotional. He came out shooting. He came out shooting. He hit some layups. He did some moves we didn't even know was in Klay bag. Not to mention the crossover and the yammy yam, the yammy jam. On 2 people that I might add. Klay showing that he has the ultimate confidence in that Achilles and in that ACL. So it was just great to see him back. As I mentioned earlier, talking about the Brooklyn Nets, Kyrie return. It was great to see him back. So it's just great to see these players being able to come back, whether it was from, vaccination status, whether it was from injury. It's just great to see these players come back and play some winning football. And last but not least, got to give a shout out to the Georgia Bulldogs, who were able to beat the Alabama Crimson Tide 33-18 in the National College Football Championship game. It was a great game. It was coming down to the wire. But we look up, the Georgia Bulldogs were able to have a 20-point fourth quarter, led by their quarterback in Stetson Bennett, who had an excellent game, 17-26 from the 17-26 on the day as far as pass attempts, 224 yards in the air, and 2 touchdowns on the day. Also got some help from their boy Zamir White, who had 13 carries for 84 yards and 1 touchdown. I mean, they came to play, and that Georgia defense was all over Bryce Young from Alabama, who had a pretty bad game. 35 of 57 on the day, 369 yards total, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. The man was running for his life all night. And we actually thought that, seeing Stetson fumble, we thought, okay, Alabama's going to turn it around. Coach Saban, like Coach Belichick, you don't bet against the GOAT. Even though I think the Bills are going to beat the Patriots, it's still one of, those coaches like that, it's hard to bet against them because they're going to do everything in their power for you to actually beat them. They're not going to beat themselves. And Nick Saban, knows how to get the job done. Great recruitment at Alabama, top-notch, performing in college when it comes to drafting these players and getting these 5-star recruits. And I even like what Coach Saban did after the game at the post-game conference, not beating up on his players, at least not in the public eye. And, letting them know how much he appreciated them for their contributions towards Alabama even making it to the big game. So shout out to both teams, but definitely shout out to the Georgia Bulldogs for getting the job done, winning 33-18. They are your NCAA college football national champions. And that's my show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad that you guys were able to join in. Right now, it's about to ramp up at my job. So trying to get in where I fit in and get in and get some work in with my podcast with Rob's 2 Cents as much as I can before I have to take just a small hiatus. You know where you guys can find me, man. I'm on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, the Rewind 60 Sports, Roku channel, and their app, which is available for Google Play or App Store, whether you have Android or iPhone. And I also want to give a shout. Thank you, brother Jerry Rouse. Shout out to you. And I also want to give a shout out to brother Freddie Henderson, man, a guy I met on Facebook. Started his own network, ASAP Sports, all plays, and he reached out to me, and I am now a panelist on his show, on one of the shows on the network, which is called ASAP in the Morning, which you can catch Monday through Friday from 9 to 11, streaming YouTube, streaming Facebook. If you follow my Facebook page, you'll see the link to watch us talk sports in the morning. And I appreciate him for the opportunity. So now I'm on a new platform, you guys. Catch me on ASAP in the Morning under the ASAP Sports Network, which you can follow on their Facebook page. Make sure you guys like their Facebook page. Make sure you check me out. 9 to 11. I'm only on there on Mondays and Tuesdays right now due to work scheduling. But I definitely plan on doing a lot with these guys, man. Great group of guys. We have fun. We talk mess. And we give you sports from real fans, doing it big, y'all. Rob's 2 Cents taking off, baby, in 2022 just got started. Hope you guys have a great one. Enjoy Martin Luther King holiday coming up this morning. If you guys don't know, man, big shout out to the king, to the Dr. Martin Luther King, for his major contributions and his leadership that he took during the civil rights movement that gave opportunities to people that look like me to be able to do things like this, to have the freedoms and liberties to live the American dream. I thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. You've always been a staple in our history, especially in my home, especially in my life. I'll never forget what you've done for us, and I try to take advantage of every opportunity that I have, because I know at one point in time that wasn't possible, being a black man in this country. So shout out to y'all. Shout out to everybody, man. Let's love each other and live in unity, man. That's what it's all about. We only got one life to live. Let's live it peacefully, y'all. You know what I always tell y'all guys to do, man? Make sure you fight for your dreams, man. So you got to set those achievable goals, man. And once you set those goals, you got to come up with a plan on how you're going to achieve those goals. And once you got your plan mapped out, the only thing to it is but to do it. You got to go and execute. I ain't got nothing but love for y'all, man. Y'all know who I am. This the boy that's hot, the boy Rob Scott. And you already know the slogan, baby. Be great, and we gone. There's a bigger fight going on. There's a much bigger agenda than the streets. And I know sometimes it's hard to see that far in front of us. But we have to look past the illusions, look past the delusions of grandeur, and look at the bigger picture. We need to become better versions of ourselves each and every day. Fight for what you believe in. Because if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. We just getting started, baby. You guys know the slogan now. Hope you all have a great evening. And we go.